Well, hello everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you are. I am excited. It's day two of the Coaching Minds Kickstart conference. We've had amazing speakers from day one, which was yesterday. We had the opening session with Paul and Adele. We had the first session with Vijaya, where she's talking about setting your pace, an amazing session with a lot of lessons to learn from. After that, we had my own she's what uh I forgot the name to use, Coach Joyce Loy, accountability partner. Yes, Coach Joyce Loy, who was talking to us about confidence, tips on how to be confident. And then after that, we had Brenda Lees. She's an NLP master practitioner. She was talking about how to make your soul dance, an amazing session again. Today, we had Madhurima. She was talking about reviewing our days on how we, like, you wake up in the morning and you check, what am I going to do today? What is my top one list priority? An amazing session. Loved her energy. We had a great lineup, and after me, we're going to have Paul, who's going to talking about our environment. So my name is Jane. I'll just go in, and if you missed any of the sessions, make sure to go in. Make sure to go and see the replay so that you can get the wisdom from everybody there. If you're watching me now, make sure to say hello so that I can know that you're here as I introduce myself. So my name is Jane Njogu. I am an NLP practitioner and life coach. I am also an EMCC. I'm a student with Coaching Minds at the moment. I'm a Coaching Minds ambassador. I'm very happy for this opportunity. I am a trainer, I am a speaker, I am a board member for an audio organization back in Africa, Center for Organization Leadership and Development Network. They deal all about organization development. And finally, I am the CEO of my life. Yes, I run this life. I make the decisions for my life. It's every day I wake up and I tell myself, hey, Jenny, as the CEO, what are you up to today? So I make sure I show up to the full, which is something that all of us need to do. We need to show up every day and remind ourselves that we are in charge of our lives. We are the one who makes, the decisions. And once we have that mindset, everything we do, we are making sure that our lives are becoming better each and every day. So, other than that, I am a transformation mindset coach. I'm all about the mind. Let's deal with the mind, because only once we set our mind, we might have all the tips we've been given from day one. We might know how to have confidence. We might know all these things. But if our mind is not going to that direction, then chances are you'll remain in your same comfort zone. Sometimes you're supposed to jump, but you don't jump because you're scared or because of something. So you have to make sure your mind is in the right place. So today I see Adele. Hi Adele. Hi Rahu. Hi Luchmi. Hi everybody who is there. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with me today. So today I'm going to talk about the meaning of communication is the response you get. And I know people are wondering why this topic. What is it about communication? Why do you have to talk about communication to make 2023 a good year? Why do you have to talk about communication for us to, appear in confidence, to live a purposeful life in 2023? So this statement alone, it is an NLP presupposition. For those who don't know what NLP is, it is neuro linguistic programming. And presupposition, these are a set of attitudes or beliefs that can influence your thinking or your lives. So this is just one of the presupposition. There are others, like the map is not the territory. There's always a truth to every behavior and all that. But for the purpose of today's call, we're going to focus on this. The meaning of communication is the response you get. Now, when you think about communication, you're going to just do a little bit of touching base of what communication is. When we talk about communication, is communication the same as information, or what is the difference? So today we are talking about communication, which is, according to Robert, it is the interchange of thoughts, opinion, or information by speech, writing, or signs. And just to give a difference between communication and giving information, where people normally get to confuse the two words. When we talk about communication, we are expecting feedback. But when we say I'm giving information, you don't expect any feedback from that person. For example, maybe you're just giving information information about directions or something. You don't expect this person to give you feedback. But with communication, there's that expectation that, hey, this person is going to get back to me. And when we look at the communication, we have the sender, we have the receiver, we have the message, we have the medium they're going to use, we have the feedback that they're going to get, and then there's always the noise that is around us. And this is where we are going to focus on in this presentation. Now, when we look at communication, communication can be classified in very many ways, and I just chose to look at four. One is communication based on the means of communication, and with this, we're talking about verbal or non-verbal communication. I highlighted that because this is where our discussion today is going to be centered on. This communication based on the purpose. Is it formal or informal? Formal is where we have mostly an organizational setup. Informal is where you're chatting with a friend, you're gossiping, you're just having a friendly chat with somebody. That's an informal talk. And then you have based on the level of communication. Is it interpersonal? Are you talking to yourself? Is it intrapersonal? Is it a small group of people? Is it a public gathering? Is it an organization level? And finally, we have based on the pattern of communication. Is it a one-way communication? And mostly with one-way communication is when we are giving information. Or is it a two-way communication where you're having a dialogue with someone? You're talking with someone to make sure that you're having that dialogue or that conversation. So, over the years or over time, we've all been told about the 7 C's of communication or the checklist. We all know, most of us, we know the checklist, if not all of us. We have, you make sure that your communication is clear. What do you mean by communication being clear? Make the objective clear. When I'm talking to you, I have to make sure that my objective is clear. Avoid complex words and phrases, and we will describe later why this is very important. Number two, you have to be very concise with your communication. Keep it clear and to the point. Stop beating around the bush. If you're giving instructions, especially if you're a leader, you have to be very concise with what you're telling them. Avoid filter words and sentences. Don't say this while you're meaning this. You have to be very concise with what information you're passing. And then the third thing, it has to be concrete. Be specific again and not vague. Use facts and figures to support your message. If it's something that you need to get done, especially if you're a leader or if you want something from someone, be specific. Stop beating around the bush. Let me use that word. And then the other thing is correct. Try to avoid typos, especially if you're sending emails, if you're sending messages, avoid typos because sometimes a typo can mean something different. Use correct facts and figures. Use the right level of language. Be correct with that communication. Be coherent. What do you mean by that? Does your message make sense? Are you making sense to the person you're talking to? Ensures it flows logically. Avoid covering too much. Again, it depends on the people you're talking to. And then it has to be complete. Does the message contain everything it needs to? When you're giving instructions to someone, when you're telling someone A, B, C, D, is that message complete? Because if you don't do that, we'll see later on in the presentation how it's going to affect the response that you get. And then again, it has to be courteous. Being polite builds goodwill, and again, it ensures message is tactful. Now, since we know all this, with all this knowledge, okay, we know communication has to be courteous, it has to be clear, it has to be complete, etc., etc. Have you ever wondered why we experience conflicts and misunderstandings in our everyday lives? I bet, like, if you just do a short reflection, maybe even today, you had a conflict with someone because of something you told them, but they did the exact opposite of what you wanted, or they just didn't listen to you, or something just happened along the way. Why do you experience all these conflicts and misunderstandings? Why? Have you ever complimented someone and deep down you knew it was a compliment, but what came out of that was something different? They felt like you're shaming them, you're just speaking evil about them. What happened along the way? Where did the disconnect come from? Yeah, we know that with all this, we know that, okay, when I'm talking to someone, I am supposed to pick up the phone, maybe. I am supposed to send an email. I'm supposed to do a face to face or a blend of all. So it depends on the type of communication you're doing. But what happens along the way? Why do we have these disconnect happening? Why do people do the exact opposite? I know at some point we feel like we are frustrated. Of course, you get frustrated when this happens. At some, you get mad, you get angry, and maybe you landed into stress. The other day we covered about stress management in Madhurima. You maybe land into stress, you may land into pressure. Maybe it even affects your productivity when people don't do what you want. Have you ever used the statement, let's see, they just don't understand me? You know what? Just leave them. They just don't understand me. They just don't get me. I know at some point in life we are all guilty of shifting the blame and saying, you know what? It's their fault. They are the problem. They are the ones who didn't do what I wanted. They have a problem. We have never sat down and and asked ourselves, what if that person was right with what they were doing? What if that person was, whatever they were doing is correct? So in this session, I want us to take a step back. I want us to take a pause and focus on this. Stop shifting the blame and take the responsibility. Okay. I remember one time I read a story of a CEO. So in the board meetings, in-house, there's always these jokes that go around. People are making jokes within the boards and all that, or within the organization. And then this guy, the CEO, was told to make a statement in public on cameras and all that because the company was doing so good, and the public was becoming more interested in them. And the CEO went ahead and made the inside joke on camera. And what happened after that was just so shocking, because the information or the communication he made to the public was not received the same way it was received in house. And what followed that was, number one, within a year, the CEO had to resign because the public just got angry. They felt like they were being abused. They just took it differently. And the company had to change name for them to start generating revenue and to stay in the market. So what happened along the way? Where did the disconnects come from? So when you go through this presentation, I want you to ponder on this question: what if the other person or the receiver was right, and however they reacted or they responded is what they received from you? And this question will allow us to stop shifting the blame. It will allow us to stop, pointing fingers all the time and always focusing on ourselves. How can I become better? Now, two things to consider when we are thinking about taking responsibility. Number one is the nonverbal cues or the body language, and number two is the verbal cues. And we'll start with the nonverbal cues. And with this, when I was doing my research, Mr. Albert in the 1970s, he came up with a very, very unique thing here where he stated that 7% of when we communicate is our spoken words. Like right now, we are on this call, 7% of what you get is the spoken words, 38% is my tone, and 55% is the body language. How do you communicate? How does your body language? Let's focus on the body language. When you're talking to someone, how is your body language? Do you tell someone I love you when you're frowning? Do you tell someone stop it when you're laughing? Do you tell your employees you need to look after the customers properly, but your body language is like wherever, man, it doesn't matter? How does your body speak to your employees? What do they see when you tell your child don't do this? What do they see from your body language? Because they just hear 7%, they hear 38% of your voice, of your tone, but the 55% comes from your body language. What do they see? And when we think about that, when you learn about the body language, it will help us become better with how we expand our communication abilities. It will help us know to pick tiny gestures from other people. When I'm speaking to someone and I see them crossing their legs, maybe they're pressed to go to the bathroom, their mind is not even there. They just want you to finish talking and run. What are the chances that this person understood what you told them? What are the chances that this person will do exactly what you wanted? So when we think about focusing the body language, it really helps us, number one, to create better connections, so we don't concentrate on what you want, or on what you want, rather on how you say it. So when I'm talking to you, okay, I might want you to do something for me, but how am I saying that? When I tell a child, do not eat sugar, sugar is bad, how am I telling that child? How will that child get that message from me? When you speak, again, I'll go back to the employees. When you speak to your employees and give them instructions, how are you giving them that instruction? Because that's where they pick that. I was speaking to a friend and she told me, you know what? Our manager, she tells us to, when a customer complains, this how she's saying, okay, we need to take care of the customer, but her body language or the way she's rolling her eyes indicates like she doesn't care or she doesn't, and so the employees are adapting the same behavior. When customers complain, they don't give it the amount of attention it deserves, and it's not because they want to, it's because they're following the pattern of their leader, and that affects the organization as a whole. So when we pick up the tiny gestures from the other person, we get to understand them better. Number two, when we start to understand about body language, it helps improve our presence. What kind of signals are you sending out with your body language? And I'm going to share something here. When you look at this picture that I have here, there's the first person leaning forward. What does that mean when they're speaking? It's like they want to hear more. There's this person who is leaning back, crossing finger, doing like, did you know that is like a, barrier? It's like a barrier that is coming between the two of you. How do you sit when you're talking to someone? Are you leaning forward? Are you leaning away? Are you crossing your legs? Are you showing the insecurity, or are you showing that, oh yeah, I'm ready to go? Are you done talking? What type of body language do you show? Because this is what people pick from. You might see like somebody was about to make a very long presentation, but the way you're appearing, they just had to cut it short and let it go because it seems you're not interested. But the truth of the matter is maybe you were interested. And then the other thing, when we understand body language, it prevents conflicts. Because if, let's say, for example, I'll use the best that I'm sure all of us are familiar with, relationships. If we are able to understand our partners and know how they behave when they're about to get mad, how many times do you think we'll have avoided that conflict? How many times do you think you'll have avoided that confrontation in the house or that negative aroma in the house? If you always knew, like, okay, she's about to explode or he's about to explode, he's about to get mad, how many times do you think you'll have avoided that? And when we understand all these things, when we start understanding the body language, when we start understanding the body language, we are able to create that awareness. And that is the other point. How do we understand our body language? Create that awareness. Let me give you another example. Have you ever considered buying something, let's say a car? Like the other day, Coach Joy was using a blue Range Rover, and then all of a sudden, when you walk outside, what do you see? You see the blue Range Rover. What happened? You've not been noticing this car, but all of a sudden, every block you walk, a blue, 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 blue Range Rover. What happened in that process? Because you have programmed it in your mind. So when you purpose it in your mind, when you purpose to see a blue Range Rover, you want to buy a blue Range Rover, you'll start seeing a blue Range Rover. The same thing with body language. If you decide, like, you know what, I want to start noticing these small things, I want to start noticing, then it is then you're going to realize, when I'm talking to this person is always doing like this. When I'm doing this, this person is always doing like this or like this or like that. That's when you start noticing these small, small things that are happening. And that way, you will be able to know how to relate with the other person. You will be able to know, like, okay, when this person is sitting like this, probably they're very full. So I need to do some activity or to do something, tell them, let's go for a walk so that they can understand what I'm talking about. When we start learning the small things, we are able to communicate better. We are able to create all those great connections. We're able to improve our presence. And at the most important thing, we are heard, and you don't get conflicts, misunderstanding, you don't get frustrated, you don't get stressed, all those negative energies, because that's what we are avoiding. 2023, we want to live in a positive mind. Now, moving on to, before we move on to the next part, the verbal words to remember by Peter. The most important thing in communication is hearing what isn't said. So when I'm talking to you, I'm sure you're able to read my body language. Am I talking to you like, I just don't want to be here, I just want to get done and I'm done and I'm done? Or am I excited? I remember in Madhurima's presentation, everybody was saying, I love the energy. Madhurima was all over the place. Her energy was, you can see her energy was high. We are not thinking about what you're saying. Remember, 55% is the unspoken words. So when you're communicating with people, they are watching what you're doing. They are watching your body actions. They are watching even all your senses, how you're doing. Maybe you might be like, when you talk to someone, you're panting so hard. Somebody will not be hearing what you're saying. They'll be concerned because what is happening to you? Probably you're conveying a good message, but your body language is sending something different. Now, Yesterday, Brenda Lee touched on something very important, the NLP communication model. And she gave us an idea of what it means or how it works and all that. And today I'm just going to repeat a little bit of that. So when we get information, that is the external event, it goes through our five senses and sometimes like 2 million bits of information. And the part I want us to focus on is the filters. So our minds, they have the deletion, the distortion, and the generalization part. And what happens is we either delete the information we get. So you give me instructions, so you tell me something. I will choose to delete, I will choose to distort or generalize that information. And this NLP was brought up by Richard Bandler back in the days when they were starting NLP. Now, if we think about that filter aspect of it, and remember that all of us have filters. All of us have filters based on different things. It doesn't matter, like, we are all different. And I tried to come up with a broad group of things that might affect our filters. And number one, we have age. We are from different generations. So the type of information that you give me is not the same type of information you give somebody who is 10 years younger than me or 20 years older than me. There's how we're going to process that information. It's going to be different. The gender, you cannot tell some jokes to a woman or you cannot tell some jokes to a man because there's a way they're going to get that joke. The values, what values do I hold? Those values differ from person to person. We are all different. We have all different values in our lives. I bet in 2023, all of us who are here have different values for the year. They have different values set for the years. So they all differ from person to person. I imagine there are millions of people in this world. Distractions, what distractions are there? What are the noise that this person is getting around them? When you're talking on the phone to this person, maybe there's a car beeping, maybe there's somebody about to step on them. So are they going to concentrate on what you're saying, or they're going to concentrate on that car that is about to hit them? And you will assume that they have heard your information. There's a lot of things that are happening around us. Expectations, what are the expectations this person has when you're giving that information? Are they going to be met? Because this person is going to process that information, is going to filter that information based on the expectations they want. Culture and beliefs. We all have different culture. We are from different places. We are a global community. We are from different places. We have different beliefs, different cultures, and that is going to affect how we are going to filter information. We are going to filter information based on what we know from our cultures and from our beliefs. Self protection, yes. Sometimes people filter information to protect themselves. Why? Because, of course, everybody comes number one. So when you're giving all this information, these are some of the factors you need to consider. Emotional and physical state. You're going to expound more on the emotional state. When you're talking to me, what is my emotional state? Did I just come from a fight with someone? Am I going to understand what you're telling me? So that is going to affect how I'm going to respond to you. Difference in speaking style. Again, when we use an example of, again, we are a global community from different countries. Some words in a family they are okay, in another family some words are not accepted. Situational context, again, that's another thing. What is the situation that is happening there? I'm about to be hit by a car. You're telling me, Jane, you need to submit the project. Am I going to concentrate on the project tomorrow, or I'm going to concentrate on me being hit on a car? There's a very big difference there. Unconscious biases. And then we have educational and developmental levels. And with unconscious biases, what I mean is attitudes that we have held subconsciously, and they affect the way we think, the way we feel, the way we respond, the way we react towards situations. So all these things, they are beyond us when we give information or when we communicate with people. All these things, we cannot control them, and they're not just on the receiver, they're also on the sender. So how do we manage this? How do we manage these filters or the influences of filters? Or rather, how do we deal with this awareness so we know all these things are happening? Now I'm going to deal with three. One is distractions. Number one, check your environment. Do they have your full attention? When you're talking to me on the phone and you hear some noise on the background, you need to check and tell me, is it a good time to talk to you, or can I call you another time? If it's a face-to-face conversation, and in coaching, this is something that we have to pay attention to, because if I'm coaching someone in a noisy place, what are the chances that they're going to listen to what I'm saying? What are the chances that they're going to understand what we're talking about? So make it easier to talk to this person where there are no distractions. Better to delay that conversation than to have that conversation when the environment is full of distractions, because there are high chances that the response that you're going to get is not going to be the response that you want. And it's always good to check with someone, is it a good time to talk? And they will be the ones to tell you, yes, it's a good time. Oh no, there's something I'm up to, but I'll get back to you shortly, da 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 da. So it's always good to check with that person so that you don't get disappointed. Number two, difference in speaking styles. Have you considered that your normal may not be somebody else's normal? Have you ever considered that? Remember, you're from different cultures, different genders, we have different upbringings. So, in one family, we might have them using, maybe when I'm giving a point, maybe let's say, for example, in my family, when we are talking and you're giving a point, you're shouting. But in another family, when you shout, it's like you're scolding that person. It's like, you're raising your voice on that person. That person is going to get defensive. And how they're going to grasp that information is different from this other person. This other person will understand, yes, I need to have awareness. But this other person, they're going to understand is you are mad at them, you are scolding them, you are raising your voice on them. That is the part of the communication they're going to understand, and they will not get your intended message, which was awareness. So this way, you need to be conscious, understand where this person is coming from, understand their background, their gender, their culture. Especially right now, we have the Generation Z. We have all these things happening, and when you speak, especially right now, to HR professionals, they will tell you that with the current generation, they have to be very careful, because how they deal with the other generations is so different with how they deal with the current generation. And that is why you see a lot of mental health awareness going around, because the current generation, how you treat them is totally different. And that is how we're seeing difference in speaking styles. You have to make sure that the person you're talking to, you have to understand that your normal is not their normal. And then number three, emotional states. Imagine talking or giving instructions to someone who has just received maybe bad news, or talking to someone who has just is in a happy mood or has received good news. Will the outcome be the same? Again, this is another area we need to consider. When we are talking, or we are giving, or we are communicating, especially in the organizational level, even in our households, it's not all the time we are happy. So you have to check your partner or the person you're communicating. What mood do they have? Is it a good time to tell them A, B, C, D? Are they going to grasp what I want? Because if you don't do that, there are high chances that the response is not going to be what you want. You come and tell someone, you express your love, or maybe you bring flowers and do all that thing, and this person has received bad news. Maybe somebody has passed, or somebody, this has happened to them, they've lost their job. So the response they're going to give you, you're not going to be happy with it. Probably you land into pressure. Oh, this person doesn't like me. Oh, there's something wrong with this person. So we have to be careful to notice all these small things that are happening around us. And then now the other thing, so with the senders checklist, there's so many other things actually. When you go back to these influences or filters, when you start considering all these things that are happening, then you start becoming careful with how you communicate with people. It can be your sister, okay, we share same background, same everything. So there's a way I communicate with my sister. It's not the same way I communicate with a friend. It's not the same way I communicate with a cousin, my spouse, or even my employer. There's so many different ways you have. These are all just but the things you need to consider. Now, moving on, senders checklist. What do I mean by senders checklist? These are some of the things you have to check in order for you to avoid those verbal and non-verbal cues. Understand the receiver. Think about how the other person will interpret it. Okay, you're speaking to Jane. Jane is from Africa. Okay, you're from Europe. Let's assume you're from Europe. You're talking to me. There's some words you might use on me. They have a different meaning to what you know. So you need to understand where I'm coming from. And if you use words, you have to explain what they mean to me, because I might take them in that context of how I know that word. Always encourage feedback. We always say feedback is very important. When I'm talking to you and the only thing you do is nodding your head, and then we're done with that conversation. I expect you to send me a report tomorrow. I expect you to do something for me. And then When that time comes, you do the exact opposite of what expected, or you didn't even do what you wanted. What happened there? Is it their fault or my fault? While communication is a two-way traffic, the biggest part is you, because you have to take the responsibility and ask, Jane, did you understand what I said? Yes or no? Okay, what did I say? Repeat to me. What did I say? Because when you get that feedback, when this person tells you, okay, you want me to do this report by Wednesday night? No, what I meant is, I want you to do this report, submit it to me Wednesday morning. So there's that, you avoid that, you avoid that conflict or misunderstanding that come along the way. It's always good to check, always counter check when you're giving, especially when you're giving instructions, always counter check. And women, we are falling short of this when we say, my birthday is coming up, and we don't finish that statement. We expect that whoever we're telling us is going to understand that I'm expecting something from you, and then my birthday will come, they will not get me a gift, and then what happens then? Conflicts, misunderstandings, things are flying around, fights are coming up. But what happened along the way? You were not clear with that communication. You were not clear with what you wanted. So always encourage feedback. Yes, your birthday is coming up. So what do you expect? Or you have that conversation to make sure that you get what you want. And then number three, repeat the same message during the conversation, especially in face to face. That's what we've just discussed. If it's over the phone, it's always good to send an after message just to make sure that your intended message is received. Remember that you might be talking to me, I'm in a noisy place, or I'm driving, or somebody's about to step on me. So on the phone, I'll just be like, yes, 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 just to get rid of you, and I concentrate on what is happening there. So it is important for you to take it your responsibility as the sender, pick the phone, send a message, or send an email to make sure that you've conveyed your message. If it's a face-to-face conversation, let them repeat what you have said. And if you have the time, make sure you go back and send that information, send that message, so that you are on the same page. Because if you fail to do that, what will happen again? Frustrations, misunderstandings. You come in the morning, you're expecting to do that presentation, it's not yet ready. Why? You are not specific on when it was supposed to be ready. You assumed this person knew when they're supposed to have it ready. So, as the sender, it is your responsibility. If you're expecting flowers from someone, tell him, hey, babe, my birthday's coming up and it will mean a lot if you bought for me flowers. This, don't just say, oh, people buy flowers on Valentine's, people buy flowers on birthdays. He might not understand what you want. And then on that date, you start getting angry, you start getting these misunderstandings and all that. So make sure you repeat the message, make sure you're clear. Use visuals if you have to. If you're sending an email or a message, use visuals. And that's why I love emojis, because an emoji, there's a way they get to emphasize the message I'm sending. Again, don't misuse the visuals. That's the other thing I have to say. Use a clear language. We've said that again. With a clear language, this person is able to understand what you're talking about. I don't know if you've been in a conversation with somebody, let's say, who has done like PhD. They tend to have very hard words. They tend to use very hard, let me call them hard words. And at one point, you might be floating with what this person is saying. Probably they just wanted to say a simple sentence, but they use different words to describe the same thing. So if this person does not turn back and ask me, Jane, did you understand what I said? I might just pretend I'm flowing with you, but I'm stuck somewhere and I'm lost. And then at the end of that conversation, your intended message never got to me. I am lost somewhere in that conversation. As a leader, wherever you are, it might be at your home, it might be at work, make sure that you're clear with your language. When you're speaking to your colleagues, be clear with what you want them to do. Because if you don't do that, what happens again? There will be that disconnect. You'll start having conflicts with among colleagues. You'll start hearing, I was expecting her to do this. I told her I have not finished this, but you never mentioned in that sentence, kindly assist me to complete that work, because you are not clear with the language. You are just expecting or assuming this person is going to know what you're supposed to do. So when we are clear with the language, it helps us avoid all these scenarios of disappointments. And then number 6, make sure to select the appropriate way of communication. Again, If it's something that you have to do face to face, if you have to drive an hour, drive an hour. Don't be lazy. Don't assume when I pick up the phone and call them, they're going to understand what I say. Or when I send an email, they're going to understand what I say. Probably this is the type of communication that requires you to be face to face with that person so that they see you, so that you can emphasize how important that is. So you decide to send an email, you decide to become lazy, you send an email and assume they'll respond acknowledging your email, blah, blah, blah. And then later on, you become so disappointed. Maybe it was a big project that you've lost. And it's because you simply did not choose the appropriate way of communication. If it's something that you have to send an email, send an email. If it's a message, send a message so that you make sure that your communication has been understood. Now, here's the other thing that I would like to bring to your attention. When you're communicating and somebody, let's say, does not do what you want, or does not, or they don't, the response is not what you're expecting, do not react, rather respond. And what do I mean by these two words? When you react, you become angry. Of course, you become frustrated. Maybe your relationship with that person ends, or it becomes horrible. There's just a disconnect that happens there, and there's toxicity that starts to develop in that area. But when you respond, you take your time and ask yourself, what happened? Why did Jane not do what I wanted? Is it me? Did my was it not clear what I said to her? Go back. How did I communicate to her? Did I send an email? Yes. Or did I tell her face to face? Yes. What happened after I told her face to face? Okay. Maybe she was not, you can assume maybe she was not in the right state of mind, or maybe I was not clear enough. So, what do you do after that? When you respond to such situations, you start coming up with reasons why you did not get the expected outcome. Learn from those reasons, and when you learn from those reasons, the next time you're conveying the same information, you will be smarter, you will be better, and there are high chances you will get the outcome that you want. But if you react, you will send the message again the same way. You'll send an email, an angry email, and tell them, Jane, I was not happy, da 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 da. But at the end, you never looked for the feedback of what happened. You never brainstormed with that person to know where the disconnect happened, so that in future, both of you, the sender and the receiver, you know what to do. So don't react, make sure you respond, and you'll be at a better place. Right. While communication is a two-way traffic, but we decide to take responsibility because we want to control the response we get. Also, if you are the receiver and you want to make sure that communication goes or flows properly, aim to provide constant feedback. If you did not understand what the sender gave you, make sure to ask them, what did you mean? Come up again, I did not understand. There is no shame in asking that. While the sender might be impatient, or the sender might look frustrated or something because you're asking a lot of questions, the truth of the matter is you are saving them from what will follow after, because there's no point of giving me some or telling me to do something, or I don't understand what you're saying and I don't ask you, and then in the end we end up in the same position repeating the same thing. So when you aim at providing constant feedback, being honest and saying, I don't understand what you say, please repeat, please explain, that will save you a lot of time as well, because you will not have to repeat the work. It will save your mental health because you'll not have that frustration. Your boss is angry. It will save you. It will save your friendship. It will save your marriage or your relationship. It will save you a lot of things. And then number two, practice effective listening. When somebody is communicating to you, leave the distractions out. Start practicing effective listening. Don't just listen for the sake of listening. If I'm communicating with, or you're talking with someone, or having a conversation with someone, and you want to use the bathroom, tell them, excuse me, I need to use the bathroom. Don't just cross your leg and press your leg waiting, please finish, I have to go, I have to go, I have to go. No. Excuse yourself, go, come back, listen with fresh ears. You're fresh and ready to listen. And then number three, overcome the fears that we hold. Then this is another thing that happens when you communicate. Sometimes you want to please the sender. So my manager has asked me to do something and I don't want to tell them I don't know how to do it. So we want to please them. And what happens in the process? They will assume, the sender will assume, okay, whatever I told Jane, it was clear. Jane never asked me any questions. So you go and do whatever you think is right. You're trying to please the sender, but in the end, you might even end up losing your job because you did the exact opposite of what was intended. You did what was not supposed to be done. So you're at a loss. So when you put this in mind, when we start practicing and accepting that we are both responsible for how we receive or process information, it becomes better for both of us. But as the sender, because you cannot control the receiver, as the sender, you need to pay attention to all those things you've touched. When you're communicating, don't assume. Make it your responsibility. Ask the question: did you understand what I said? Yes. What did I say? And they will repeat it to you, and you will correct them if it's wrong. You'll tell them, yeah, exactly, you're good to go, perfect. So it is your responsibility to make sure that that communication, you will get the response that you want. Now, finally, words to remember: good communication is the bridge between confusion and clarity. In 2023, we all want to live a purposeful life. We all want to live a life away from drama. We all want to live our life away from confusion. We want a life full of clarity, and it starts with communication. And that's why I felt like having this topic is very important, to remind us of the small things, how we communicate, holding ourselves like this. I once held a seminar, a webinar the other day, 1st of December, I remember. And at the end, I was given feedback because after my presentation, I was like this. And somebody told me, Jenny, when you hold yourself like this, it looks like you're sad. And that is the message we are getting from behind here. And I was like, oh, okay. So how you're communicating, your body language matters a lot. And this 2023, if you're a leader, wherever you're communicating, make sure that your body language speaks the language you're speaking. Don't say, I will not do it, but your body language is speaking differently. It is where we say you want to say no, but your body is saying yes. So you're confusing even the other person. So you have to pay attention to all these areas. Right, that brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for tuning in. If there are any questions, I'm ready to take them in. As I go through your questions, my contact details, you can reach me via email at jane@coachingmindsglobal.com. Follow me on Instagram, on YouTube. And yeah, that brings me to the end of my presentation. If there are any questions, I'm happy to respond to them. In the meanwhile, I'll just go through the chat. Hi, everyone. I see all of you here. Thank you, Paul. Yes, I have the hoodie on. Yes, Paul, the important points. Thank you, Adele, for your comments. Yeah, I think that brings me to the end of presentation. If you're going to be watching the replay, make sure to leave your comments or your questions, and I'll be more than happy to answer them. Paul, are there any tips on how to respond when our emotion gets the best of us? Are there any tips to respond when our emotions get the best of us? Right. What I can say with that is it's always good to take a pause, because when you're acting with emotions, the response you give is not going to be very effective. So take a pause, do all the activities you've been given over the weeks you've been given, like, anchoring yourself or doing taking that 1 minute to do deep breaths before you move to that communication, because our emotions, they tend to affect how we deal with the other person. And again, it's normal. We are all human beings, so it is normal and it does happen. I hope that answers your question, Paul. Let me see who have I met. Hi Donna, very informative. Jane, this is clearly a topic you're very passionate. Yes, because I used to experience a lot of conflicts and misunderstandings in the past, and once I came to realize that I am the person who is controlling that communication, I became a better person in communicating. And that's why I believe if we all take the responsibility, it makes life so much easier for all of us. Thank you so much, Donna, for that. Thank you so much. Yes, thank you, Paul. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Everyone will be watching the replay. Leave your comments and your questions. Stay tuned for our last session today from Paul about your environment. I'm sure it's going to be very informative. And this is just the beginning. I know we're going to have a lot of events lined up. I know we are going to learn. The whole of 2023 is going to be about growing, thriving, and becoming the better versions of ourselves. Thank you, guys. Thank you.